The hospital smelled like antiseptic and cold air, the kind that creeps under your clothes and settles in your bones. I had been sitting in the emergency room waiting area for almost 3 hours, my hands clasped tightly together in my lap, fingers stiff from worry and exhaustion. Michael had been rushed in earlier that morning after claiming he slipped coming down the back steps. He said he heard something crack. But when I arrived, limping dramatically and clutching at his side, something in me had already felt off. Welcome to my channel, I'm Mama Jo, and before I tell you what happened next, comment where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my stories travel, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new chapter. Maybe it was the way he avoided my eyes. Maybe it was the way he winced too loudly, like an actor trying too hard. Maybe it was the way his cousin Chloe had answered his phone first and told me what happened, her voice breathless in a way I didn't understand, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I was a wife. I was supposed to care first, question later. So I sat there, staring at the glowing exit sign across the waiting room, listening to the soft pinging of elevator doors and the distant echo of a monitor alarm. My purse lay beside me, heavier than usual, not from weight, but from the knot of dread coiling in my stomach. A young woman sat across from me cradling a sleeping toddler. An older man paced near the vending machines. A teenager whispered prayers over her phone. Life was happening all around me, yet time felt frozen, as if the hospital had swallowed the sun. I rubbed my eyes and exhaled shakily. Michael. What really happened? I whispered to myself. Just then, a pair of soft shoes approached. I looked up expecting a doctor, but instead a nurse stood before me. A woman in light blue scrubs, her hair pulled tightly into a bun. She couldn't have been more than 30, but her eyes carried something heavy, something that looked like knowledge mixed with urgency. "Mrs. Thompson?" she asked quietly. I straightened in my chair, hope rising in my chest. Yes, that's me. Is he all right?" The nurse didn't answer right away. Instead, she scanned the waiting room as if checking to see if anyone was watching us. Her gaze flicked left, then right, then settled on me with unsettling focus. She stepped closer, so close that the air between us felt charged. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Please don't react." My breath caught in my throat. Before I could form a single word, she slipped something into my hand. A folded note, warm from her palm, and without waiting for a response, she walked away. Not briskly, not hurriedly, just deliberately, calmly, as if handing wives mysterious notes was a routine part of her shift. My fingers closed around the paper by instinct, hiding it from view. I stared after her, confused, my heart pounding in my ears. She didn't look back, didn't give me a secret signal, didn't break character as she turned the corner and disappeared into the staff hallway. I didn't open the note immediately. Something in the nurse's face, something strained and deeply concerned, had shaken me enough to freeze my hands in place. Instead, I tucked the note under my thigh and tried to breathe normally. My gaze returned to the exit sign. Pretending nothing had happened. The seconds crawled by. The vending machine hummed. A stretcher squeaked past the doors. Someone coughed. Someone cried. Someone laughed too loudly at something on their phone. But all I could hear was my pulse. After several minutes, when I was sure no one had been watching, I slid the note out discreetly and unfolded it beneath the cover of my purse. 2 short lines stared back at me in hurried handwriting. "Don't react. Check the camera." A chill rolled through me so violently that I almost dropped the paper. Check the camera? What camera? Why? My eyes darted toward the hallway Michael had been taken into. I remembered seeing a set of monitors when I first arrived. Security screens glowing behind an open door near the nurse's station. Was that what she meant? Or did she mean the hospital room camera? Did she want me to pull up footage? Was Michael unsafe? Was he hurt worse than they told me? Or was someone else involved? I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry, like it had been scraped with sandpaper. None of this made sense. Unless the nurse had seen something she wasn't supposed to. Something that involved Michael. Something she couldn't say out loud. I folded the note slowly, sliding it into the hidden pocket of my purse. My palms were sweating now, heartbeat thudding painfully in my chest. "Emily?" I jerked my head up. A doctor stood before me, clipboard in hand. "Yes?" I said quickly, forcing a steady voice. "Your husband is stable. No fractures? A slight dislocation, maybe a sprain? We're running one more scan to rule out complications." I blinked. No fracture? But he said, the doctor smiled politely. Sometimes patients assume the worst. Pain can feel worse before evaluation. His explanation made sense. Too much sense. Michael wasn't dramatic like this. He wasn't fragile. He wasn't the type to demand emergency help unless something serious happened. Yet, here we were. Can I see him? I asked. The doctor hesitated. Not yet. They're prepping him. My stomach tightened. Prepping him for what? Why did everything feel off? He excused himself, and I sat there again, gripping my purse so tightly my fingers ached. What was the nurse trying to warn me about? What could be so dangerous or sensitive that she had to slip me a note instead of telling me directly? I closed my eyes. For a moment, I remembered the Michael I married, gentle, hardworking, warm. But the Michael of the last few years, the one who came home late, turned his phone upside down at the dinner table, whispered with Chloe in corners during family gatherings. He felt like a stranger wearing my husband's face. And sometimes, when he thought I wasn't paying attention, his smile at her was a little too tender. The room around me dimmed in my mind as possibilities spiraled. Insurance fraud, family betrayal, another woman, money, something illegal? I forced myself to breathe, one thing at a time. First, check the camera. I stood up slowly, legs trembling under me. If the nurse meant the security desk, it was down the hall and around the corner. I remembered it clearly, the wall of small monitors, each showing a different hospital wing. I smoothed my blouse, steadied my breath, and started walking. One step, another step. Every footstep felt heavier, louder. The closer I got, the more the fluorescent lights seemed to hum with warning. I passed a nurse on the phone, 2 orderlies pushing a cart, a mother soothing her crying child. Everyone felt like a blur, like the world was happening underwater. My heartbeat grew louder than everything else. When I turned the corner, I saw it. The security office door slightly open, monitors glowing in a dim room. My breath hitched. This was it. This was where the truth was waiting, whether I wanted it or not. I reached for the doorframe, my hand trembling. Just as I was about to step inside, a voice broke the silence from behind me. Soft, cautious, almost afraid. Mrs. Thompson? Please don't scream when you see it. I froze. If someone had asked me years ago what marriage felt like, I would have said a slow dance. Something gentle, something patient, something you guide your steps into and trust the rhythm of. I believed that with my whole heart, especially in the beginning, when Michael would spin me around our tiny kitchen and kiss my forehead like I was the only woman the world had made. But dances end. Music changes. People shift in ways you never see coming. As I stood in that dim hallway, the nurse's warning echoing in my ears, the memories poured in, heavy, uninvited, painting the truth I had tried so long to ignore. Michael and I met when I was 23. I was working late shifts at a diner, saving every tip to put myself through nursing school. He was already charming back then. Too charming for his own good. He came in every Friday night, sitting in the same corner booth, ordering a grilled cheese he barely touched. He wasn't there for the food. That much became obvious. One night, when my feet were aching and my apron was damp with the smell of bleach, he looked up at me with those soft eyes and said, "Emily, you deserve better than this place." No one had said anything like that to me. Not then, not ever. It was easy to fall in love with someone who made the world feel lighter just by standing in it. We married 2 years later, our wedding small and imperfect, full of mismatched flowers and cheap champagne. To me, it was beautiful. Michael held my hands like they were made of something precious. And for a long time, really a long time, he was good. He worked hard, brought home roses, left little notes on the fridge like, "I love you more today," or "dinner on me tonight." And when we struggled financially, he took extra shifts. When I had doubts about myself, he held me, whispering that his world made sense only because I was in it. But then, life changed. Not in one earthquake-shaking moment, but in subtle shifts, things so small you ignore them at first. His job improved, his paycheck grew, his confidence turned into ego, his kindness turned into impatience, and the little notes stopped appearing. It's strange how you never notice the exact day someone stops loving you. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's a slow quieting of the things they used to do, until silence becomes the new normal. I remembered the first time I noticed something was wrong. Michael came home late, long after dinner had turned cold. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and instead of smelling like the cedarwood cologne I bought him every Christmas, he smelled like cheap perfume. He brushed past me when I asked where he'd been. "Don't start, Emily, I'm tired." No explanation, no apology, no dance to pull me close again. But the worst part wasn't the lateness. It was the emptiness in his eyes. Like the version of me he once loved had been replaced by someone he merely tolerated. And then there was Chloe, his cousin, younger by almost 20 years, always around, always smiling at him in ways that made my stomach twist. She came to our house too often, stayed too long, laughed too loudly at things he said, brushed invisible lint off his shirt when she thought I wasn't looking. "We're family," Michael would say whenever I raised an eyebrow. But family doesn't hold eye contact a little too long. Family doesn't whisper in corners and stop talking the second you walk in. I tried to be gracious, tried to believe I was imagining things, tried to remind myself that insecurity was a poison that destroys from within. But the truth? Women know. We always know. Even when we can't prove it. Our souls whisper warnings our hearts try to silence. At first, the changes were small. Michael started locking his phone. He worked late more often. He laughed at texts he wouldn't let me see. He showered the moment he got home, as if washing off a day I wasn't allowed to know about. Then it got worse. He criticized my cooking, my clothes, my hair, my weight, things he once adored. One day, while I was folding laundry, he walked by and muttered, "Maybe if you took better care of yourself, I'd have something to come home to." He didn't even say it angrily. He said it casually, as if it were fact. I sat on the floor, holding a half-folded towel, trying not to let the tears touch the fabric. Because once you let tears fall onto something, it becomes a memory. But I forgave him, because that's what wives do. We forgive, we hope, we cling to the good that once was. Then came the accident. Michael called me from an unfamiliar number, his voice strained, panting as he said he slipped outside and thought he dislocated something. He asked me to come quickly, sounded desperate, sounded scared, but something felt rehearsed. And when I arrived at the house, Chloe was already there, breathless, hair messy, clutching his arm like her life depended on it. "Oh, Emily," she said too dramatically. "It was awful," he screamed. "I didn't know what to do." But her eyes betrayed her theatrics. They were too bright, too excited. Michael groaned, leaning on her more than necessary. "I think something snapped," he said, squeezing his side with exaggerated anguish. I drove them both to the hospital, though something inside me kept whispering, "This isn't real. This isn't him. This isn't an accident." The way Chloe hovered over him, the way he let her, the way neither of them thanked me, the way she whispered into his ear as we walked into the ER, it was all wrong. And as the nurse took Michael to triage, Chloe slipped away and returned with a worried face so performative it belonged on a stage. She sat beside me in the waiting area, legs crossed, tapping her nails on her phone. "Men are such babies," she said, but at least he called the right person first. Something hot bloomed in my chest. "Excuse me?" She smiled sweetly, too sweetly. "Oh, relax, Emily. I'm just saying he trusts me. We're close, always have been." My jaw clenched. There are only so many times a woman can swallow her suspicions before one of them becomes poison. But before I could respond, the nurse called her name. Yes, her name, not mine. Chloe immediately stood up, brushing invisible dust off her skirt. "That's me," she chirped, and disappeared behind the double doors as if she had every right to be there. I sat alone, stunned, watching her vanish into the same hallway my husband was in, and I thought that was the worst moment of the night. I was wrong, because an hour later that same nurse returned, not to call me to Michael, but to slip a note into my hand, a note that would shatter every lie, every excuse, every fragile hope I'd been clinging to. "Don't react. Check the camera." The words replayed in my head even now, echoing louder each time. Maybe the nurse saw something. Maybe she heard something. Maybe she knew something I didn't. But whatever it was, it meant the truth was finally coming for me. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to see it or run from it. Still holding my breath, I stepped closer to the security office door. Whatever waited behind that door, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer the woman who apologized for everything. No longer the wife who accepted crumbs of affection. No longer the fool love had blinded. The nurse didn't slip me a warning by accident. She slipped it because she saw something. something I needed to see too, and I was finally ready. I hesitated with my hand hovering over the metal handle of the security office door. Hospitals always made their hallways too bright. White light that reflected off the floors so sharply it made everything feel exposed, revealed, honest. A stark contrast to the darkness twisting inside my chest. Behind that door was the truth. And truth is a strange thing. It can save you or destroy you, sometimes both at once. I took a breath and entered. The room was small, humming softly with machinery. A wall of monitors showed every angle of the hospital. Entrances, waiting rooms, hallways, elevators. A security guard sat with his feet planted firmly on the floor, shoulders tensed like he'd been waiting for me. "You must be Emily," he said quietly. The nurse must have warned him. My fingers tightened around the note. "Yes." He didn't ask questions, didn't offer small talk. He simply turned to one of the screens and tapped a timestamp. "This is from an hour before your husband came in." His voice was gentle, too gentle, the kind of tone people use when they're about to show you something you can't unsee. My heartbeat drummed against my ribs as the footage began to play. There was Michael, walking into the hospital parking lot, not limping, not clutching his side, not grimacing in pain. Walking, normally, easily. He even swung his arm casually as he moved, the way he always did when he was relaxed and unbothered. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath catching. He paused at the trunk of his car, glanced over his shoulder, and then waved someone forward. Chloe. She slipped out of the passenger side like a woman who had done this far too many times, cautious but confident. Her heels clicked lightly against the pavement as she approached him. She wasn't distressed. She wasn't worried. She was smiling. "Rewind that," I whispered, my voice cracking. The guard obliged. There it was again, her smile soft, flirtatious. The kind of smile a woman gives a man she feels entirely too comfortable with. She touched his arm lightly, so lightly I doubted it was the first time, or even the 10th. Then, Michael laughed, a full laugh, shoulders back, teeth showing, head tilted, a sound he hadn't made around me in months. It took me a moment to remember how to breathe. They spoke for a moment, their bodies angled toward each other like lovers sharing a secret. Then Chloe reached into her purse and pulled out a thick, white envelope. The guard zoomed in. Cash. So much cash the envelope bulged at the seams. My stomach twisted. "What is that?" "I can't say for certain," the guard murmured, "but you should see the rest." Chloe handed the envelope to Michael. He flipped through it casually, like someone counting bills, not someone in pain. He nodded in satisfaction. Then the footage punched the air out of me. Michael took off his jacket, tossed it onto the car seat, and began rubbing his side violently with his fist, hard, over and over, creating redness, swelling, pain on purpose. He winced dramatically after a few seconds, then stumbled to the ground like a man auditioning for a role he already thought he deserved. Chloe rushed to him, putting on a performance worthy of a daytime drama. Wide eyes, frantic breathing, hands fluttering like a woman terrified for her lover. But the footage, it didn't lie. Her panic was practiced. His pain was rehearsed. The accident wasn't an accident at all. I pressed both hands to my mouth, trying to hold back a sound that rose from somewhere deep and wounded inside me. Tears blurred the screen, but I forced myself not to look away. The guard continued. "Here's the moment he called you." Michael reached for his phone, not struggling, not grimacing, not helpless, just acting. Chloe leaned close, whispering into his ear, and he nodded like an obedient puppet. The guard pressed play again. Michael lifted the phone and said in the most pitiful voice I had ever heard come from him, "Emily, can you come? I think something snapped. Please hurry." It wasn't just a lie. It was betrayal with precision, designed to get me there, designed to make me panic, designed to pull me into whatever scheme they were threading together. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear slid from my jawline onto my collar. My hands trembled hard enough that I had to grip the back of a chair to keep myself steady. "Do you want to see more?" the guard asked gently. I nodded. I had to finish it, even if it hollowed me out. He switched to another camera angle. Chloe and Michael walked into the ER. Not touching, not close, but somehow still connected, an invisible thread of betrayal linking them. Chloe sneakily dabbed her eyes with a tissue before stepping into the public hallway. Fake tears for the nurses. Michael clutched his side again, leaning against the wall dramatically. Actors. Both of them. And I was the audience they were performing for. My hands curled into fists. Then came the final blow. Camera 14. The hallway outside triage. Chloe leaned in close to Michael's ear and said something. He smirked. Not smiled. Smirked. The guard turned up the volume. Only faint audio. But it was enough. Chloe whispered, "She'll believe it. She always believes everything." And Michael replied, "That's why this will work." The room spun. The walls pulsed in and out of focus. My breath hitched in my throat like I'd swallowed something sharp. I felt the chair behind me before I realized I was falling into it. The silence in the room expanded, thick and suffocating. Everything I had built my life around, my marriage, my loyalty, my sacrifices, collapsed in on itself with a single, undeniable truth. He wasn't hurt. He wasn't scared. He wasn't calling for his wife. He was using me, using my worry, my kindness, my trust, using me like a tool in a plan I hadn't been invited to understand. I pressed a trembling hand to my chest, trying to steady my heartbeat. The guard looked away politely, giving me space without saying a word. That small mercy nearly undid me again. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he whispered. But I shook my head. "No," I said, voice raw. "I needed to." I stood, but my legs felt weak, like my bones were suddenly too soft to hold me. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. The hallway outside was bright. Too bright. I blinked against the glare, gripping the note the nurse had given me. Check the camera. She knew. She knew, and she tried to help. I began walking, but not toward the ER, not toward Chloe, not toward Michael. My feet carried me toward the stairwell, the one place in the hospital where people's cries were swallowed by cement walls. I pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. The stairwell was empty, dim, echoing. I walked down one step, then another, gripping the railing until my knuckles paled, and then my body folded, sinking to the cold step like my knees had given up. The tears came fast, hot, uncontrollable. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the stupidity I felt for not seeing it sooner. The shame of believing lies wrapped in fake tenderness. The heartbreak of realizing I wasn't losing him. I had lost him long ago. My sobs bounced off the concrete walls, forming a rhythm of grief I didn't try to quiet. I pressed my forehead to my knees, breath shuddering, hands shaking as I whispered the only question my mind could form through the pain. "Why, Michael? Why?" For everything we had built, everything I had given, everything I had forgiven. Why this? But the stairwell didn't answer, just echoed my grief back to me. I cried until the tears ran dry, until only silence remained, until something inside me, something small, something wounded, finally broke loose. But in that breaking, something else awakened. Not anger, not revenge, not yet. Something calmer, sharper, older, clarity. I wiped my eyes, lifted my head, and forced my breathing to steady. If Michael wanted to build a lie, then I would build the truth. And truth, once revealed, has a way of rearranging everything it touches. I stood up, gripping the railing. Michael thought I was broken. He thought the footage would devastate me. He had no idea it would do the opposite. Because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. And I wasn't done. Not by a long, long shot. When I finally stepped out of the stairwell, my eyes were swollen and my breathing was still uneven. But something inside me had shifted. Pain had its place. But clarity, once awakened, was impossible to silence. The hospital corridor buzzed with low conversations, patient monitors beeping steadily, nurses moving with purposeful calm. I walked slowly, forcing each step forward even though my body felt heavy, like someone had draped grief across my shoulders. But there was one person I needed to find, the nurse who slipped me the note. She'd known something. She'd risked something, and people don't risk their jobs without reason. Her name badge had read M. Rivera. I remembered it clearly because her eyes had held a warning that morning, a kind of urgent softness I hadn't known how to interpret then. I found her near the nurses' station, her hands working quickly as she organized charts. When she looked up and saw me, her expression shifted instantly, from professionalism to quiet concern. "You saw it," she said softly, not even phrasing it as a question. I nodded. "All of it." Nurse Rivera set the charts down and gently guided me to a small alcove beside the supply closet, private enough that we wouldn't be overheard. "Sit," she urged. I leaned against the counter but didn't sit. My legs didn't trust the ground beneath them anymore. "Why did you give me that note?" She hesitated, glancing around. Because Because we've seen this before. My breath caught. Seen what before? She folded her arms tightly as if bracing herself. Your husband and the woman who came in with him. They've been here before under different excuses. Twice. Each time something felt off. My stomach twisted. Here? For injuries? She nodded once. Different injuries. Different stories. Her voice dipped lower. But always the same pattern. Dramatic arrival, exaggerated symptoms, vague explanations, and always targeting departments with high insurance payouts. Insurance. The word hit me like cold water. But you said before... My voice weakened. You said staff suspected fraud? She exhaled hard, as if she'd been holding this in for too long. Yes, we suspected they were staging minor injuries to file large insurance claims. But today? She shook her head. Today wasn't just fraud. Today was planned. I felt myself step backward, kneading the wall at my back to stay upright. Planned? For what? Nurse Rivera's expression softened, not with pity, but with the kind of empathy that only comes from seeing suffering too many times. For money, she said quietly. Always for money. I shook my head weakly. But why? We aren't wealthy like people think. Her eyes flickered with hesitation. Emily. On the admission forms Michael filled out, he listed assets. My heart froze. What assets? He listed your assets and their values. I blinked rapidly, trying to process. Listed. My assets? She nodded cautiously. Your home, the family estate, the property on Chelmsworth Lane, the one worth $7 million, I whispered, finishing the sentence for her. God, my father's estate, the home where I learned to walk, where I played under the apple trees, where he taught me to ride a bicycle, where my mother planted her roses. The land soaked with memories. My childhood, my parents, my beginnings. Michael knew what that estate meant to me. He knew it was the one thing I had sworn never to sell. Nurse Rivera continued. He wrote that it was under evaluation, potentially being liquidated. What? My voice cracked sharply, pain slicing through every word. I never said that. I never approved that. That's why I slipped you the note, she interrupted softly. Because the hospital flagged the claim. The numbers he put down don't make sense for a simple dislocation. And, well, something else happened. Her expression tightened, fear flickering across her features for the first time. What else? I whispered. She leaned in closer, voice trembling slightly. Someone attempted to access your medical records this morning. Not his, yours. My breath stopped. My records? Why? Financial verification, she whispered. Identity matching, social security checks. She swallowed hard. But they used a visitor login, not a legal request. My knees buckled and I grabbed the counter. Who? I choked out. Who accessed them? She didn't answer immediately. She seemed to fight with herself, weighing risk against morality. Then she spoke. Chloe. The sound of her name was a blade, a cold, gleaming blade slicing through the final threads of denial. Chloe, Michael's cousin, the woman who had hugged me at Christmas, who borrowed dresses from me, who said, Emily, you're like an aunt to me, the woman I had trusted in my home. My throat felt tight. Why would she? But the truth came crashing in before I could finish. Identity fraud, insurance manipulation, accessing my personal information, listing my assets as if they were his. Michael wasn't just betraying me emotionally. He was attempting to dismantle me financially, to strip me bare, to take the one thing left that connected me to my parents, my childhood, my life before him. Nurse Rivera continued, and here's the part you really need to hear. She looked me dead in the eyes. This isn't the first time they did this. My pulse hammered in my ears. You mean, this isn't the first time they staged an injury? No, she shook her head. This isn't the first time they've tried to use your information either. We flagged suspicious activity twice before, but we couldn't prove who was doing it. My fingers curled around the edge of the counter until they hurt. And I had no idea, I whispered. That's how people like them operate, the nurse murmured. Quiet manipulation. They chip away at you so slowly you don't notice until something breaks. Something had broken. Not in the hospital, not on a monitor, not in my bones, inside me, a part I had tried too long to protect. I inhaled shakily, feeling something cold and resolute settle into place beneath my ribs, something harder than hurt, older than betrayal, deeper than fear. Resolve. Why are you telling me all this? I asked her quietly. Because someone needs to, she replied, lifting her chin in quiet defiance. Because women like us, we get ignored too easily, but not today. Her words cracked something open inside my chest, a fierce gratitude, a fierce grief. I closed my eyes, letting the truth sink in, letting the betrayal settle like dust around my feet. Michael didn't just lie about an injury. He didn't just take Chloe's hand over mine. He didn't just deceive me. He used me. He used my name, my assets, my history, my father's estate. And he did it with the intention of stripping me of everything that made me me. The nurse touched my arm lightly. Emily, I think you've been hurting quietly for a long time, but you don't have to be quiet anymore. I opened my eyes, and something in me had changed. Not broken, shifted, strengthened, straightened. Thank you, I whispered. She gave my hand one firm, supportive squeeze. Be careful, and Emily, whatever you decide to do next, don't let them blindside you again. I nodded slowly. Then her final words sealed the chapter with a cold, echoing certainty, because people who commit fraud once almost always commit it again. A chill ran through me, not because she said it, but because I suddenly realized she was right, and if Michael and Chloe were bold enough to try this, then this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. This isn't the first time they did this, and it wouldn't be the last. When I left the hospital that evening, the world outside felt strangely quiet, as if the earth itself was holding its breath with me. Cars passed by, lights blinking like heartbeats, but everything looked different, sharper, colder, clearer. Betrayal has a way of peeling back the film over your eyes. For years, I had seen Michael through a fog, blurred by devotion, excuses, hope. But that fog had burned away in the glow of the security monitors, leaving me face to face with a man I no longer recognized. I gripped the steering wheel tightly as I drove home, the note still tucked safely in my purse, the nurse's warning echoing endlessly in my mind. This isn't the first time they did this. If Michael thought I would break apart, if Chloe thought I would stay blind, if they believed I would crumble under the weight of what I saw, they hadn't counted on the one thing they didn't understand. Once a quiet woman sees the truth, she becomes unstoppable. I parked in front of our house that suddenly looked foreign and hollow, a facade built on memories that no longer warmed me. The porch light flickered against the dusk, but instead of comfort, it felt like a spotlight, revealing the cracks in everything I thought was stable. Inside, the house was still, too still. A place that had once been filled with laughter, whispers, shared meals, and soft kisses was now a museum of a life I realized I'd lived alone. I walked straight to the study, my steps firm, my breath steady. If Michael thought he was the only one who could play the role of actor, he was mistaken. I began with his desk. It wasn't snooping, not anymore. It was survival. The top drawer opened with its usual soft glide. Bills, receipts, business cards, normal things. I sifted through them until my fingers brushed something thicker, a stack of envelopes banded together with a rubber loop. Bank statements. My heart thudded. I wasn't expecting to find anything so obvious, but betrayal makes people sloppy, especially when they think they've already won. I sat down, pulled the lamp closer, and began reading. The first few statements were normal. Bills paid, groceries, gas, the mundane trail of everyday life. But then, a withdrawal for $4,500, another for $3,200, transfers to an unknown account tagged under initials I didn't recognize. C.R. Chloe Roberts. My breath grew shallow. The transactions continued. More withdrawals, smaller payments, cash apps, charges at restaurants he had never taken me to, hotels I'd never seen, luxury spas, bars, private medical clinics. Each number was a blow, each date another fracture in the foundation of my marriage. But then something else caught my eye. A recurring payment every month, without fail, made to Meadowlawn Estates, Unit 4. Blinked. Unit 4B? We didn't own any unit, we didn't rent anything, we barely left town, unless… No. My chest tightened. Michael had a secret apartment. I felt my pulse race in my throat, but I forced my hands to stay steady. I reread the line again and again as if repetition could make the truth softer. But it didn't. Betrayal never softens. It only sharpens. I took a deep breath, rolled my shoulders back, and pushed on. There were more documents beneath the envelopes. A phone bill, Michael's line. Chloe's number listed more frequently than mine. Dozens of messages marked sent, dozens marked received. My stomach twisted as I imagined what those conversations looked like, talking about me, planning their schemes, celebrating their small victories, and beneath those, a folder he had tried to hide carelessly under loose papers. Bold letters stared up at me. Life insurance policy, primary beneficiary update. My blood ran cold. I opened it with trembling hands. Michael had taken out a policy, large, too large, and the beneficiary, not me, not the estate, not even a relative of mine. Chloe Roberts. The room felt like it tilted sideways. A thick, painful lump formed in my throat as realization crashed over me in violent waves. This wasn't just fraud. This wasn't just deceit. This wasn't just betrayal. This was strategic, planned, calculated down to the paperwork. What were they preparing for? Why did Chloe need to be the beneficiary? What was the endgame? I pressed my palms to the desk and inhaled shakily. I needed more proof. More than bank statements. More than quiet suspicions. More than what the camera had shown. I went to Michael's coat hanging by the door. The pockets were full. Receipts, a pen, a small brown notebook. I flipped it open. Page after page of meeting notes, appointments, oddly vague entries like finalize plan, need confirmation, see arranging documents. But the most damning line was scribbled carelessly near the bottom. E must sign by Friday. E me. Sign what? The estate papers? The insurance claim? Something forged in my name? My knees weakened, and I sat down slowly on the arm of the sofa, my vision blurring. My father had given me that estate when I was only 18. He'd said, "This land is our blood, Emily. Protect it." It held my childhood swings, my mother's rose garden, the smell of summer rains on the porch, the echoes of family reunions. It wasn't just property, it was lineage, it was love, it was legacy. And Michael had been trying to make me sell it. And worse, Chloe had been helping him. I wiped my tears angrily. Not tonight, not in this moment, not anymore. I stood, spine straightening with every breath. If they were planning something, I would be 3 steps ahead. I grabbed my laptop, opened my financial accounts, and began combing through every withdrawal, every deposit, every suspicious line item. I printed everything, highlighted everything, organized it into a binder with color-coded tabs. By the time the clock struck midnight, the binder sat, thick and heavy, in front of me. My case, my evidence, my truth. But I wasn't done. I opened Michael's email. He had once trusted me enough to share his password. It hadn't changed. I searched for Chloe's name. Hundreds of emails appeared. I clicked the most recent. "We need her signature. Without it, nothing goes through." Another. "She'll believe the injury. Don't worry." And another. "Once she signs, we're free." I swallowed hard, bile rising in my throat. Then I clicked on a voice memo attachment. Chloe's voice filled the room. "She won't suspect anything, Michael. She's too trusting." His reply made my skin crawl. That's what makes this perfect. I closed the laptop before the scream inside me could escape, but just as I was about to breathe, one last email caught my eye. Subject, Unit 4, B. Rental confirmation total. Paid $24,000. 6 months. The sender. Chloe Roberts. She was paying for it. She was funding it. She was involved far deeper than I thought. This wasn't an affair. It wasn't emotional cheating. It was partnership. A business alliance. A conspiracy. Against me. Against my inheritance. Against my identity. Against the last thing my parents left in my hands. I sat back, the weight of everything crashing into me. The life I thought I had was over. But the woman who sat in that dimly lit living room, she wasn't the fragile wife who had walked into the ER earlier that day. She was someone new, someone forged, someone focused. I took the binder, closed it gently, and held it against my chest. Tomorrow, Michael would come home expecting sympathy, expecting devotion, expecting a frightened wife who still believed his lies. But he had forgotten something important. A quiet woman is not a weak woman. A loyal woman is not a blind woman. A betrayed woman is not a broken woman. And tomorrow? Tomorrow he would meet the woman he had underestimated, the woman he used, the woman he hurt, the woman he thought he could play. He had no idea. I had already built my case, and I was ready to end his. Morning came too quietly. The sunlight drifted into my living room in pale gold ribbons, warming the hardwood floors and landing on the binder I had spent all night creating. I hadn't slept, not because I was restless, but because purpose had a way of keeping my heart awake. Michael thought he knew me. He thought I would cry, break, sit quietly until he explained away his lies. He never imagined I would wake up with evidence alphabetized and tabbed, a lawyer's appointment booked, and a plan forming with surgical precision. By 10 a.m., I arrived at the legal office, an unassuming building tucked between a pharmacy and a bank. My lawyer, Sarah Whitmore, was waiting for me in the conference room. She was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a reputation for turning betrayal into courtroom poetry. "You look like you haven't slept," she said gently. "I didn't," I replied, "but I think that's the best thing that could have happened." She nodded. "Show me what you brought." I handed her the binder. She flipped through the pages the way a surgeon examines x-rays, silent, focused, unflinching. When she reached the life insurance policy, her jaw tightened. "This is serious," she murmured. When she reached the secret apartment lease, her brows shot up. "Oh, he made a mess." And when she saw the emails and heard the voice memo, "Emily," she said, lifting her eyes, "you have enough evidence here to bury him." I exhaled, a tremor running through me. "I don't want to bury him. I want the truth exposed. I want my life back." Sarah nodded. "Then let's do this properly. HR is bringing Chloe in at noon. The hospital staff has requested a meeting at the same time. They want closure on this too." "The nurse?" I whispered. "She'll be there." A flicker of gratitude warmed my chest. By noon, everything was in motion. The hospital's administrative meeting room was bright, sterile, and far too peaceful for the confrontation brewing inside. A long glass table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs that looked too soft to hold the weight of betrayal. Inside the room waiting for us, the HR director, a representative from the hospital legal team, Nurse Rivera. Her posture firm and resolute, and 2 chairs left open at the end of the table, one for Michael, one for Chloe. I sat down next to my lawyer, binder placed neatly in front of me, my hands folded gently over it. I felt calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes not from peace, but from absolute clarity. 5 minutes later, the door swung open. Michael entered first. He limped dramatically, overacting to the point of insult, but when he saw who was in the room, his limp faltered. His eyes darted around the table, confusion quickly shifting into unease. "What is this?" he demanded. "Why is HR here? Why is... Emily, what's going on?" Right behind him, Chloe slipped into the room, her eyes wide, mascara slightly smudged, as if she knew, deep in her bones, that her performance today required more than tears. "Emily," she breathed. I didn't know... I didn't look at her. Not yet. Michael took a few steps toward me, hands out in a half-reach. "Honey, are you okay? I came home last night and you weren't there and I..." He tried to touch my shoulder. I leaned away. His expression cracked. "Emily, what's happening?" My lawyer spoke first, her voice crisp. "Mr. Thompson, Miss Roberts, please take your seats." They hesitated, then they sat. The room grew silent. The HR director cleared her throat. "We're here today because of concerns raised by our staff regarding your visit yesterday." Michael scoffed loudly, rolling his eyes. "Concerns? Seriously? I was injured. Injured. You people are unbelievable." Nurse Rivera straightened in her chair. "Sir, you were not injured." His head snapped toward her. "Excuse me? You were not injured," she repeated calmly. Before he could respond, Sarah slid the binder toward the center of the table. "Let's begin." She opened to the first tab marked Video Footage. The security guard entered the room with a laptop, nodding respectfully. He connected it to the projector. Michael's bravado softened, just a fraction. "Wait, why are we looking at..." The footage began to play. There he was, walking, laughing, stretching, counting cash. Chloe beside him, close enough for their shadows to overlap. The room stayed so silent that the clicking of the video progress bar sounded like thunder. When the part played where Michael dramatically rubbed his side to create redness, Chloe let out a tiny strangled gasp. Michael began shaking his head violently. No, this is out of context. You don't understand." The nurse video whispered, "She'll believe it. She always believes everything." And his voice whispered back, "That's what makes this perfect." Sarah paused the video at that exact frame. Michael's face collapsed. Chloe covered her mouth. I didn't speak, not a word. The HR director leaned forward. "Mr. Thompson, This is clear evidence of fraud. Michael's hands trembled. No, I wasn't. Chloe suddenly burst into tears. It wasn't me. He forced me. Michael turned to her, betrayal flashing in his eyes. Forced you? You were the one who— Don't lie, she snapped, pointing at him with shaking fingers. You said we were in this together. You told me Emily didn't care about the estate. You said we needed her signature to save us both. My heart stilled. Save them both from what? Michael stood abruptly, palms flat on the table. I never said that. She's twisting things. Emily, baby, listen to me. My lawyer raised a hand. Don't speak to her. Michael's face twisted, desperation clawing through the cracks in his arrogance. Emily, please, you have to believe me. She's lying to protect herself. Chloe let out a bitter laugh. Protect myself? You're the one who came up with the apartment idea. I turned my gaze toward her. Her tears stopped instantly, as if she hadn't expected me to actually look at her. You, I said softly, paid the rent. She swallowed hard, mascara streaking her cheeks. Michael said it was temporary. He said he needed a space to plan things. He said you wouldn't understand. And you believed him? My voice didn't shake. Not anymore. Her eyes filled again. I thought he said you were going to sell the estate. He said we all needed the money. My estate? My voice sharpened just enough to draw silence. My family's legacy. My father's land. What made you think you had any right to it? Chloe shrank in her chair. I don't know, she whispered. Michael ran a hand through his hair, frantic now. Emily, please. Baby, you know me. You know I wouldn't hurt you. My lawyer laughed softly. You planned to steal from her. He slammed his hands on the table. No, I was trying to fix things. Things got out of hand. I was pressured. By who? I asked. His mouth opened, closed, no answer. By Chloe? No, by everyone, he stammered. The bills, the debts, the expectations. You don't understand how much pressure I was under. You're right, I said quietly. Because when I was under pressure, I didn't lie, I didn't steal. I didn't risk someone's medical record, and I didn't betray the person who loved me. Michael's shoulders dropped. His face crumpled. Emily, I'm sorry. I didn't want to lose everything. I leaned back slowly, hands folded in my lap. You already did, I whispered. There was no rage in my voice, no shouting, just truth. The HR director closed the laptop. Mr. Thompson, Miss Roberts, this is now an ongoing legal matter. Fraud charges may be filed. Identity misuse, attempted financial manipulation. The hospital will pursue full investigation. Michael sank into his chair, eyes hollowing in real time. Chloe began shaking. I didn't mean, but the truth spilled anyway. Every lie, every scheme, every manipulation. They incriminated each other so fast it was almost pitiful. Almost. Nurse Rivera leaned toward me, voice soft. You did the right thing coming today. I nodded once. But then, as Chloe sobbed and Michael stared into the ruins of his own making, the HR director said 7 words that froze the entire room. This isn't the first file we've seen. My heart dropped. What do you mean? I whispered. She looked at both of them with disgust. They've done this before, with another family, another woman. A cold wave washed over me. The camera footage wasn't the beginning. It was the middle of a story I never knew I was part of. When I walked out of that meeting room, the air in the hospital corridor felt different, lighter somehow, as if the walls themselves had exhaled after witnessing the collapse of a lie that had been growing like mold behind closed doors. Michael didn't follow me. Chloe didn't call after me. Neither of them had the strength. They stayed inside that room with the HR director and the hospital's legal team, surrounded by printouts, footage, signatures, documents, and the broken pieces of the elaborate trap they had built. For the first time since the day I married him, Michael had absolutely no control. I stepped outside into the parking lot, the sunlight high and warm against my skin. I stood there for a few seconds, breathing deeply. Everything around me felt surreal. The cars, the trees, the sound of birds. All so normal, while my reality had shifted drastically in a matter of hours. It was strange how betrayal reshapes the world. Nothing looks the same afterward. Nothing feels the same. You begin to recognize the difference between the person you loved and the person who stood in their place. I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel lightly. My hands didn't tremble anymore. My heartbeat was steady. There was no fear in me, no confusion, no desperation, just clarity and calm, and a deep, quiet resolve. The next few days unfolded like peeling back layers of a rotten onion, one revelation after another. Michael didn't come home. Instead, I received a call from his employer 2 days later. A clipped voice on the line said, "Mrs. Thompson, your husband's employment has been terminated effective immediately. We have received documentation regarding fraudulent insurance activity. We will be cooperating with investigators." I closed my eyes, letting the words settle. Not satisfaction, not joy, just justice. The truth has a way of unraveling everything built on lies. Another call came that afternoon. This time, the county sheriff's office. "Mrs. Thompson, we need to inform you that a warrant has been issued for Chloe Roberts in connection with falsifying medical forms and unlawful access to protected information." My breath left my body in a quiet rush. Chloe, arrested. I pictured her, the bright-eyed girl who once hugged me on Thanksgiving, calling me Aunt Emily with honeyed sweetness, the same girl who sat with her legs crossed in my living room, gossiping about her friends while I offered her tea, the same girl who smiled at Michael just a little too warmly. Betrayal never looks the way you expect it to, and sometimes the ones who stab deepest are the ones who hug the softest. 3 days later, I filed for divorce. I signed the papers slowly, carefully, feeling something heavy lift off my shoulders with each stroke of the pen. Sarah, my lawyer, looked at me with pride. "You're doing the right thing." "I know," I whispered. "It's just the end of an era." "Sometimes endings are the only way beginnings can breathe." I nodded. She slid the finalized documents toward me. "Given the fraud, the insurance scheme, and the attempted manipulation of your inheritance, this divorce will move quickly. You'll retain full rights to your estate and every asset tied to your name. He won't be able to touch a dime." A quiet, grateful breath slipped from my lips. My father had once told me that the estate held the spirits of our ancestors, that its walls carried laughter, tears, stories, and strength. I'd feared losing it. I'd feared failing him. But now, his legacy was safe, and mine was just beginning. When I returned to the hospital a week later to sign a few additional papers regarding the fraud case, I didn't expect to see Nurse Rivera waiting for me in the lobby. She wasn't in scrubs today. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, her hair softer, her expression gentler. She stepped toward me with a small envelope in her hand. "Emily," she said quietly, "I'm glad you came." I smiled softly. "I was hoping I'd get to thank you again." "You don't need to," she replied, "but well, there's something I need to give you." She held out the envelope, her fingers lingering on it as if deciding whether to let go. "What is it?" I asked. Her eyes shimmered with something between sorrow and resolve. "A file," she said. "Something you should know." I took the envelope slowly, my heartbeat beginning to climb again. "What's inside?" She hesitated. Then she spoke words that sent a cold ache through my spine. "Months ago, another woman tried to warn you." My breath caught. "What?" I whispered. "She came here during an admission Michael made," the nurse continued. "She told security she believed he was staging injuries. She said she didn't want you to get hurt, but she never left her name. She was scared." I swallowed hard, fingers tightening on the envelope. The nurse continued softly. "We didn't have proof back then, but she left a written statement and a note. We kept it in case it became relevant someday." She touched my shoulder gently. That day came. I opened the envelope slowly, my breath trembling. Inside were 2 sheets of paper. The first was a statement from an unidentified woman. "He is using her. He's planning something with the cousin. She needs to watch her finances. She needs to watch her heart." My vision blurred. The second sheet was a small, folded note. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was the same handwriting from the note the nurse gave me in the ER. It read, "Tell her to check the camera." A tear slid down my cheek. Not from pain, not from heartbreak, but from the strange weight of being protected by a stranger who understood my suffering long before I did. Nurse Rivera's voice softened. "You weren't alone, Emily. Someone tried to warn you before any of us did, and when she couldn't, I did." I closed the envelope gently and held it to my chest. "Thank you," I whispered. "For everything." She nodded once, her eyes warm. "Take back your life, Emily. You deserve a peaceful one." Say that night, I stood on my porch as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the yard. The estate, My father's estate stood quiet and proud behind me. The roses my mother planted bloomed in soft reds and pinks along the garden wall. My world had shattered, but the pieces were rearranging themselves into something new, something honest, something mine. I thought of Michael. His lies, his schemes, the false injury, the laughter on the camera, the betrayal behind closed doors, and I finally understood something simple and powerful. The footage didn't just reveal his actions. It revealed his character, his choices, his intentions, his truth. Just as a camera never lies, betrayal never hides forever. I exhaled, letting the wind carry away the last fragment of the woman who once loved him blindly. Then I whispered the truth, not to the air, not to the house, but to myself. The camera didn't just reveal what he did, it revealed who he truly was. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.